1975 seemed to be a particularly productive year at WHAS. This program, Emotional Pain, Who Needs It?, was another award-winning production. This is probably one of the deepest, most complicated subjects I ever dealt with. Emotional shells. As I point out, they isolate you from experiencing emotional pain, but later isolate you from being able to experience real love. A real two-edged sword. What I did here was use a pre-produced piece to set up the subject. Paint the picture, if you will, for telephone response. And in that regards, it worked beautifully. This was one of the few times I pre-auditioned a production for professional evaluation. I just wanted to be sure my views were 100% correct. For you radio bugs, if you ever have any doubts about radio production material, check it out with the pros first before airing. From 1975, Emotional Pain, Who Needs It?
Emotional pain. Who needs it? Not me. Or do I? Why are people so afraid? Afraid to say or show what they really feel? Oh, you hear the standard cop-out. Well, I've just been hurt too many times in the past. Why take another chance? Or, well, my feelings are personal, of no concern to anyone but myself. I just receive. I don't transmit. I'm just an observer. What you have here is really the beginning of a protective shell, a shield, if you will. Imagine a drinking glass turned upside down with you under it. Shells are neat. They take only a short time to build, and if you set your mind to it, a long, long time to tear down. You can look out and see other people. Other people can look in and see you, but really can't get to you, can't get close to you. And that's really the problem. Personality shells, while they protect you from possible pain, they also protect you from possible joy. Wherever the shell is in one's mind, whatever area of life, consciously, there's nothing. It's neither hot nor cold. It's stagnant, status quo. And it's really such a waste of precious life. If someone else passed judgment on you and said, henceforth, you will have no more conscious feelings in this area or that, I'm sure you would tell that person to politely get lost, that they had no right. You would not stand still for someone else to cut you out of life or off from life. If someone else attempted it, you would rebel. Yet you, the person who should care most about you, can easily build a shell and cut yourself off from life. In the long run, you can hurt yourself far more than anyone else could. And the sad part about it is, basic shells are usually reserved for expensive items, important feelings. If they were not important to you, if you were not sensitive to the feelings, there would be no need for a shell. Now, imagine millions of people walking around with giant gaps in their personalities, and these millions meeting other millions with still more gaps. What happens to compatibility? If you're lucky, you meet a person that has the same giant personality gap you do, and together you both deny each other this important part of life, deny to each other that it even exists. If you're not lucky, you just become incompatible. So far, we've only talked about the conscious problems with shell building, self-denial of total personality, two-party personality incompatibility. But perhaps the greatest problem still lies ahead, personal subconscious conflict. While mental shells and shields work quite effectively in the conscious mind, they have little effect on one's subconscious. That part remains true to the real you. It still hungers to be fed that important part of life that your conscious mind, because of the shell, denies even exists. Now, you're at conflict with yourself. You have become incompatible within yourself. You can't even get along with you anymore. You can't even get close to you anymore. you don't know you anymore. And the longer a shell is allowed to exist, the deeper the subconscious conflict goes. That sounds pretty heavy, but what it means is pretty soon you feel sad or bad or depressed and don't even know why. The shell seemed like such a simple and quick solution in the beginning. It eased the pain. It made it easier to cope with life then, but can make it impossible to cope with life later. Let's take, for example, the most common cause for shell building, love. Let's say a highly sensitive person falls in love and loses. It hurts. Hurts to indescribable depths, to the point where one would almost do anything to get over the pain, or at least be able to cope with the pain. But the pain lingers. Bitterness starts creeping in. Love, who needs it? Who wants it? It just causes pain. Then the shell starts creeping in. Look, here I am. I've got the solution. I can isolate you from this pain. Hold it in limbo. You don't have to work it out now. We'll do it later when you feel better. Let me, your new shield, handle this. I'll protect you. And then the giant lie. Trust me, you'll never have to worry or be hurt by love again. The lie exists because the shell can do nothing for the needs of the subconscious part of your mind. It can't change it. It can only confuse it, frustrate it. That sensitive person still needs love, still hungers for love. But now the protective shell makes it totally unobtainable. The next time you find yourself in a conflict, emotional pain, and saying something like, well, who needs it? Not me. Think about it, don't you? Isn't that, in the long run, a lot healthier than the alternative?
This afternoon, on the comment line, our subject matter is emotional shells. And Nancy, what would your experience be with emotional shells?
For one thing, I'm divorced, and that right there causes, a lot of conflict and everything. Mm-hmm. And I have 2 children. My experience has been for 2 years now, and I just feel like I've been hurt so bad by the first person that every person I've been out with recently, well, in the future and everything, that they couldn't love me, and I couldn't love them. More or less, more that I couldn't love them as much as I did with my husband and everything. And I've realized quite a few times, and I can't help myself, but I get into a depression where I don't even know what I'm depressed about sometimes. And I'm like wringing my hands, and I'm crying and everything. And I don't even understand it myself. And it's a lot of things build up in your mind and everything, and you build up a resistance to other people and everything. You start to grow to the point where you say, well, I don't need this, so I get away from it and I'll be okay. And everything that was said in that, recording that you had is true. And it's kind of hard to get out of it, and you're always trying to find somebody to give you an answer. And it seems like nobody can give you the right answer, or you're not satisfied with that answer.
Right. Of course, probably the answer lies within you, and it's a matter of time. And I think the important thing, though, would be to realize that there's a possibility of developing a shell when you go through a traumatic experience like a divorce, and being on guard against doing that, and probably seeking, just like our marriage counselors, to try to hold the marriage together. Mm-hmm. There are some excellent programs as far as coming down out of a marriage. Mm-hmm. That are extremely beneficial group therapy sessions with qualified psychologists. Mm-hmm. And they are very beneficial. I guess the main thing, though, people, when they go through an experience like that, they feel like, well, sure, I know other people have gone through the same thing, but not like I'm going through it,
Yeah,
You really feel very much within yourself that yours is a special thing, and it is to you.
That's true. Yes.
But the important thing is it's like an accident. You know, if you're in a car and you're speeding down the highway and you have an accident and you get hurt physically, you go to a hospital. You know, I think there are such things like emotional accidents, right? Then they need help also.
Yes, that's right. Well, I realize this, but like I say, I guess it's just something that you have to figure out by yourself, and time is supposed to heal everything, but I'm the kind of person, I'm very impatient, and it doesn't seem like it seems like there's more time than I want it to be, you know, between my kids trying to find a father and trying to find someone that would love me as much as I think that they should.
Right.
So
right.
It's very hard to analyze myself, which is good in a way, because a lot of people, they just keep it built up, and sooner or later they bust. You know, they just can't hold it back anymore.
That's true, and of course, then if you have children involved, the additional pressures, the possible pressures from the children, can even make it more confusing.
Right.
But you know, it's like the thing about the accident. You know, if you've got a physical problem, that you get hurt physically, then you go to a hospital, and it's the same thing with the mind too. When you go through a traumatic experience, sometimes it's difficult for you to be able to work yourself out of it.
Right.
But for someone else, like a trained psychologist, it can really be a great help.
Yes. Well, I've often wondered if I should admit that I should go and talk to someone like this. That's another thing, you know. You think, well, should you, go and talk to somebody? Would people think that there's something wrong with you, and all this kind of stuff? But it's kind of hard to live with this.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's, I think today, life today is by far more complicated than at any other time in history,
Yes, that's for sure.
And we have developed techniques in psychiatry, psychology, and the most important thing is really to be able to get a hold of yourself, and if you can do it within yourself, that's beautiful. But if you can't, then rather than letting it go on, there's help right there at the telephone.
Yeah. Oh, well, I really appreciate talking to you, and I enjoyed what was said on the radio.
Thanks, Nancy.
I really enjoyed it. So, thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Leslie, you had a comment?
My name is Frank, Miss Frank.
Yes, Miss Frank.
Leslie Frank.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, what I wanted to say was the girl that called before about her emotional problem. I know that maybe a lot of people don't believe in God, don't believe in church, but, that is the only thing that can help her out. And I think that a lot of these marriage counselors are all right, and doctors, but, they can go so far. And I think that if she would pray and, ask God to help her, I know He will. And and I think that you all could be a witness on the air, too, if you would refer the Lord to them and tell them that, that's where they can get their help, because that I think there's only one that can help.
Right. But it's it's a two-way street, though, and the most important thing is what works.
For herself.
Right. It's what works that really matters, And if that works for a person, if they can relate to that and understand that, and it actually be a comfort to them and a help to them, then I think I think that's beautiful, right? But if it doesn't, and if they can't, then there should be an alternate means of coping with the situation. Dorothy, our subject this afternoon on the comment line: emotional shells in traumatic experiences. Did you have a comment?
Well, I'm just answering to the young lady that called a while ago, said she had 2 children, and she was so depressed about her husband.
Yeah.
Well, the thing she needs is friends. That's the only cure. I went through the same thing. And the only thing that cured me was having true friends. And she shouldn't think that all men are like the first one. Supposing men thought that all the women, if they were in that same condition, were the same. and she has to make up her mind to have friends and trust others.
So friends worked for you?
Yes. You have to have true friends and go out and forget. And she must remember she has 2 children to live for.
Right.
That is all I had to say.
Beautiful. Thank you for calling.
And I thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Emotional shells, traumatic experiences. Peggy, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I would like to say I have been listening to your broadcast, and I agree with many things that have been said.
Right.
Although I would like to express personally, I've been through some of these traumatic experiences. As a matter of fact, I am 25, and I've lived through 25 years of constant trauma and depression. And I would like to tell the people out there that are having these problems of nervousness, crying, self-hatred, loneliness, or anything of this type, and these deep depressions, please to seek psychiatric help. It is available.
Exactly.
And I think that it would really benefit them tremendously. It has me. I've had a year of therapy, and although I'm not out of the woods yet, I'm on my own, and I'm doing very well now. And I can thank my therapist for that.
And there is no stigma with that.
No, of course not.
It's the same as breaking an arm.
That's right. If you're afraid that people will laugh, they won't. When you go in, they're very nice, they're very kind, and they hear what you have to say, and believe me, they certainly do help.
How did you go about finding help?
Well, if I may mention the services that I used the River Region services. It is based on your income. You pay what you can afford. They are very nice. They have competent personnel, and my therapist was an angel, just an angel.
Beautiful.
But I would also like to suggest to some of the readers that would prefer to try something else before they go seeking psychiatric help, or psychological help, I should say. There is a book that I have read that was of great benefit also.
I'm okay, you're okay.
No, not that one. That's a good one also. But the one I'm thinking about is a 54-page book. It takes about an hour to read. The name is How to Be Your Own Best Friend. And this is by Mildred Newman and Bernard Berkowitz. And also for the lady that called in about having just been divorced, perhaps she could try reading Creative Divorce. And I'm sorry I don't know the authors.
Very good. Peggy, thank you for calling.
And thank you for listening, sir.
Bye-bye. Dorothy, this is Dorothy Day. Welcome.
I just would like to comment on the woman that talked a while ago about her River Region and the kind of help she's getting.
Right.
The saddest thing after psychiatric help, when you think everything's going beautifully, and all of a sudden they're not going to see her anymore, and she's going to have to face reality, and that's when the low blow comes.
How's that?
Because there isn't anybody else right at that time, and you're on your own.
There's always something else, Dorothy.
No, not really.
Well,
no.
What we were talking about, a multifaceted approach to this thing. Whatever works, and
if you've gone so long, and you've gotten therapy, and you've gotten everything else, and you really feel great, you think you can fight the whole situation, and you will refer your psychiatrist to everybody else, or as it, in her case, River Region, and she evidently is still getting their help, and then all of a sudden, when she isn't getting it anymore, that's the downfall, and there is no one else to help you then. They make you feel so good while you're being treated, and then you are just dropped completely, and I know you do have to do it on your own, but it's really sad. Then all of a sudden you're so completely on your own, and you can't live your life being dependent on a program, but that's they build you up too much. I don't know. That's just what I
Right.
Thank you.
Dorothy, thank you for calling.
Thank
Bye. Emotional shells, traumatic experiences. Jackie, you're in counseling, right?
Right.
And we were talking about programs that do exist on a continuing basis.
Oh,
most assuredly. It doesn't have to be connected up with a psychologist or even a counseling session. Recovery Incorporated here in Louisville makes it a habit only to use lay counselors. If you want to go to recovery, you have to be a patient that's had a mental problem.
Right.
If doctors and nurses want to go there, or psychologists or whoever, they have to go there either to observe or as a participant. They don't go to treat people. And other groups, well, depending on what your problem is, Alcoholics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, they've even got, I don't know, Rage Anonymous or something like that that started lately for people that can't control their temper.
Right.
And the idea of counseling is not to cure the patient at all or the client. The idea is mainly to get them to the place where they're autonomous enough or on their own enough to make decisions so that they know when they got to go back for help. And
I guess there's what you would call it, a mental image, I think, that in some programs, movies, whatnot, that we see a psychiatrist doing his number on a person, you know, and it's a one-shot deal, and they come out. Right, they come out and everything's fine. You know.
But that,
and
it's not an overnight shot. Well, you know, looking at it from Freud's point of view, the trauma goes way back in the person's age to their early childhood. Many other psychologists and psychiatrists have other views as to when this trauma started.
Right.
But in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, if you're going to treat the patients on the basis of their past history, you can't cure them.
Right. Well, it's just, again, I think people find themselves in an emotional situation or traumatic, you know, thing, and would like, as anyone in a situation like that, an immediate cure. You know? And we talked about emotional problems being the same things as broken arms, right?
Oh, I think a more apt comparison would be diabetes.
Yes, yes.
You don't cure diabetes, and the person with a psychological problem may never be truly cured, but he can learn to cope and learn how to deal with the problem on a day-to-day basis, which is the most important way of handling it on a one-to-one, one time, you know, even on a 1 minute to another minute.
I think group therapy, how do you feel about that? That's something new, relatively new, as far as...
Well, on the outside maybe, but I mean out in the public life, but they've been using group therapy for years in the mental institutions or in a lot of other settings. They've used the group therapy, and it's very popular, and it works very well on the sense of it's not only the group leader who is, of course, trained to handle the group or to lead the group.
Right, trained psychologist or psychiatrist.
Right, or social worker or counselor, person with MA in counseling, something like this, or some type of postgraduate work. But the main beauty of group therapy is very often it's not the psychiatrist or the group leader that calls the bluff of the person who's in group. It's their peers, the other people in the group.
Right. Would not one of the aspects, the good aspects of group therapy outside of like encounter, you know, type situations, would be just a group of people to meet with and to talk to that have similar problems?
Well, that's essentially what recovery is. Recovery Incorporated. They go there, and everybody knows, you know, it's no holds barred. Everybody knows what the other guy's problem is.
Right.
And when they start talking about their problem, people call them up short. You know, something you got to deal with. Let's deal with it. Let's not talk around it.
Right.
So with the group setting, in many instances, there's someone that you can turn to if between group meetings you get low. You can call somebody or talk to somebody. There's many different hotlines. In addition, the crisis lines in Louisville.
Another aspect of, say, we were talking earlier about going through divorces, things like that. When that occurs, people by force have to change their life status. They're no longer married. You know, they have other things that are happening. Many times they move. You know, they move away from their friends. Maybe they did not have that many friends to begin with, you know. And we have another situation occurring simultaneously with the basic emotional problem that they may have had, and that's the upset of a normal lifestyle, or their lifestyle. And so, again, the emphasis on friends, you know, beautiful friends to help you. To talk with.
Somebody just to sound off to.
Right. Excellent. Jackie, thank you for calling.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Peggy?
Yes.
Yeah. Go.
I wanted to make a comment about Dorothy. I respect her opinions very much, but I would like to expound on that point just a little bit more. About the therapy, the counseling. There is continuing counseling, and I believe she's losing sight of the individual. I think she's leaning a little more towards the program. Yes, they do build you up, but you also build yourself up. You retain inner strength. If you didn't have the strength to begin with, you wouldn't have asked for help, point one. And you build up your strength, your endurance, very slowly, inch by inch, day by day, and it is very, very heartbreaking, to be truthful. And then when you reach a point where they feel that you don't need therapy anymore, then you may give it up, which I am out of therapy.
Right.
I've been out of therapy for several months. I am currently enrolled in college, which I would not have done without the therapy sessions. I am going to get a pre-med degree.
Wow.
Hopefully attend U of L and become a psychiatrist, preferably a child psychiatrist. And age 25, I think this is pretty good.
That's beautiful. It really is.
But I really felt that I'd left my point a little at loose ends, you know, and I just did want to clarify that.
Right. And the other aspect is, too, that if a person goes to counseling and they're not prepared to get down to brass tacks and to face their thing, you know, then counseling really is not going to do them that much good.
That's right.
They have to be ready for it emotionally.
That's right. If you are not ready for it, it won't do you a bit of good. And you can't go in and expect miracles.
Right.
You have to work at it, and you have to work darn hard at it. So it's really up to you. There's just guidance, and you're on your own.
Right. Peggy, thank you for calling.
And thank you very much, sir. You're doing a fine job.
Beautiful.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.